A lot has changed since the first Avatar came out. Many of us have graduated from school, we've had children, some of us have even lost our hair. So, one question remains. Was it worth the wait? On the latest episode of the Professional Appreciators podcast, my co-host Evan and I broke down this question and reviewed the film.
I was surprised when I go in, okay, this is a 3-hour sequel to Avatar. I'm kind of expecting a lot of complexity to the story, which I don't know why, because if you watch any of James Cameron's movies, the story structure is actually very streamlined and very, you know what I mean? But like the first Avatar actually like had a lot of ideas on its mind with like the switching consciousness and the oneness with humans and nature and like all that. There's actually a lot of like, you know, I wouldn't say main themes, but like ideas raised. So I'm kind of expecting a lot of sci-fi ideas to be raised in this film. Yeah. And James Cameron doesn't go that route at all. Yeah. And when you get to the end of the movie, you realize, oh, what this was a 3-hour visual epic that really what it comes down to is like an affirmation of like family. Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting because I wasn't expecting that. And for me, the movie climaxes on the idea of your family, though it brings like baggage, can also be your greatest strength. Yeah. And that
line that he says at the end is like, us being together is our greatest weakness and our greatest strength,
and
which is like,
and that setting doesn't determine your family. Yeah. Because they're on the run for most of the movie and they're away from their home, and that's affecting all the characters negatively. And then the kind of arc is Jake slowly realizes, I've been pushing my son away, separating them to keep them safe. But you don't keep them safe by separating each other. Mm-hmm. We're strongest when we all come together, which is very simple. It's like been done 100 times, which I get that. I 100% get that. But I think it works is because the story is so simple when it's being included in a visual story that is not simple whatsoever.
Well, and that's the thing where I completely agree with the method, because whenever you're thinking, I mean, you have to be thinking, when I'm making a movie this extravagant and grand, how do I tell an insanely complex story and have an insanely complex?
It's too disorienting.
Like it's almost too much. And I appreciate him saying like, I'm going to take the simple story of a family coming together and being stronger together, and having a father learn an important lesson. And like I also just really enjoy any time that a story shows an elder, like the older, like more experienced character, learning and growing alongside the younger, less experienced characters, because it shows that like, even as you get older, even as you like are supposed to have it all together, you're still growing, you're still learning, you're still changing. And so I really appreciate that part of, we're going to keep the story simple and we're going to tell this really simple story in a really grand and beautiful way. I think that was really smart to do. And overall, I really liked the movie.
I like that it was simple, but I was like, it could have hit harder if a lot of those character dynamics were fleshed out a little bit more. Sure. But because there were so many characters, not even just on the protagonist side, but even like within the military group. Yeah. And there's so much narrative stuff going on in terms of like new settings and the creatures. I don't think a lot of time could be set to that. And I also,
and that's that was another thing that I noticed about this movie, is that he spent a lot of time, and I think much needed time, building out the world. Yeah. He was giving us brand new information about the planet and the world that we had no idea about in the first movie. Yeah. Like there are different people groups that live on different parts of the planet, and like they're
blue but a little less blue.
Yeah, but they also have like different features. Yeah. That like tree people are better like living in the tree, you know, like water people have larger tails or whatever it is. So it's like he's giving us like brand new information about the world, and he's like world building, all while trying to tell a story and like do it in the most visually like groundbreaking way possible. And so it was doing a ton. Like even though it was a simple story, it was still doing a ton as far as world building and all of that goes. So
to the part that everybody loved, let's talk about the visuals and the action. There were so many shots, and especially close-ups, where I was like, that has to be paint. Like, that's not CGI. Like that, like it looks like a human wearing like blue paint and like prosthetics. Mm-hmm. It was, I don't know. I mean, they invented new technology for motion capture on this film, and you could tell. And just whether you like the story or not, like it is undeniably a game changer.
That's the thing I've heard everyone agree on so far, basically, is like visually it was unbelievable, visually beautiful. Like you can't watch that and not be kind of taken by the visual, especially like some of those sprawling landscapes. Mm-hmm. It really makes you wonder, like, man, that's all developed. Like that's CG. Like they developed all of that, and it looks beautiful, and it's moving, and it's like fascinating to think about how they would have done that. But like, so I think no one would disagree or like not appreciate that part of the movie. Yeah. One of the things that I felt, I didn't know if you felt this or not, but the frame rate, did you feel funny about the frame rate at first?
I forgot going in that it was good to be shown at a higher frame rate. Like, what is it, like 40?
I think it's 48.
48, yeah. Like, I forgot about that. So I was not thinking about it in the movie, which I'm kind of glad. Yeah. I didn't want to be constantly thinking, like, do I like this frame rate? Yeah. But I do remember there were times, like, in heavy motion scenes where I was like, something's off. Uh-huh. But I was kind of confused. I was like, maybe it's the screen we're on, I was like, in the movie theater. But... and having like listened to people and like read some reviews, like 100% the frame rate worked on like close-ups, because like when the movie slowed down and you're just getting shots of like the humans, like I think that high frame rate really helped the motion capture, because like when they're emoting in these close-ups, like again, it looked so stinking real and so beautiful, like the way the lighting was on the faces. So I'd have to rewatch it to really get an opinion on the frame rate. But
I had the most trouble adapting to it, like in the first half hour, like when they were flying around and like kind of in those parts of the movie, it was like immediately apparent. I was like, this is not 24 frames per second. Yeah. But I kind of was like, I don't know that I would expect anything else, but I kind of got used to it. I don't know. After a while, I got used to it, but it did make me wonder about like when, like I'm sure they're going to be experimenting with frame rate like more and more as time goes on. It makes me wonder if there's a way to use a higher frame rate like when it's necessary, and use a lower frame rate when it's necessary.
I think that's probably where it needs to go, because it was not every time, and there were definitely moments where I was like, this, like, and again, I think it's in like the more intimate character moments where you would think, oh, high frame rate would be better for action, which maybe in some scenes it was, but at least my first take is like those really intimate character moments just felt even more real and visceral and beautiful in that high frame rate. So maybe it's kind of like how filmmakers use IMAX cameras, where, movies aren't shot 100% with IMAX cameras. It's okay, for this set piece we're doing IMAX, and expanding it, and I think the frame rate can work similarly. As an overall experience, like it was great, and that last hour alone is like if I just took that last hour, I would easily put it in the top 5 movies of the year. Like just that last hour alone, like the way when they finally when Stephen Lang's character is on the ship and has his kids trapped and Sully has to go rescue them, like from that moment on was just like another level.
It was like whenever it was everything you want like a big blockbuster to be, because like it started, that action scene started, and it was like so much was happening. It was so crazy and so awesome that you're watching and going like, oh my gosh. And it just keeps like one-upping. It's like exactly what you want a blockbuster to do.
Because there is a way where you can make like an hour-long climax action sequence feel so monotonous.
Yeah.
But the fact that the stakes kept changing and new developments were happening, because it starts with like, okay, the kids are kidnapped, Sully has to get him. Okay, that's one like struggle dynamic.
Yeah.
And then when the whale comes into play and the whale flips the ship, you're like, oh, okay, this is a whole new ball game, you know? It almost was like a greatest hits of James Cameron, because you have like the abyss kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You have like the ship going down and them like stuck in the ship underwater was very Titanic. I don't know, like I kind of got a little bit of flashbacks of like the end of Terminator 2 there a little bit. Like I just really felt like he was like action set piece wise, hitting his greatest kind of hits, which it didn't feel like derivative at all, but I don't know. I just thought it was cool. He kind of just was like, I'm using every trick in the book in this last hour.
Sure.
And that really sealed the deal for me, because there were moments throughout the movie where I was like, this is great, but there are other moments where I'm like, okay, it's a little redundant. It's feels a little like stretched out, but like again, like that last hour, I was like, this is what I paid for. Out of 5 whales, what would you give Way of the Water?
I would give it 3.5.
3.5. Okay. I would give it a solid 4 out of 5 whales.
Solid 4 out of 5.
There was just enough story there for me to be invested in the action, you know, because if you don't care for the characters at all, the action's kind of meaningless. So there was just enough there. There was a little bit of heartstrings at the end, but not a ton. And when I really think back to the story, I'm like, am I in love with these characters that weren't a 5 out of 5? No. Is a lot of the technical filmmaking 5 out of 5? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, okay. And then the big question for me was like, would I watch this 3.5 hour movie again? And like a day after watching the movie, I went, yes. I'm like, okay, well, you know, if I wasn't feeling like watching again, then it'd probably be a lower score. So that's why, you know, it's a 4 out of 5 for me.
I would see it again with you.
Oh, that's great.
I would.
Maybe at a Alamo Draft House. Yeah. So thanks for sticking with us, and looking forward to another year.
Me too, man.
All right. Well, see you soon.
Bye.